Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our discussion with our federal representatives today. With us today is MP Erin O'Toole, representing the riding of Durham, and MP Philip Lawrence, representing the riding of Northumberland, Peterborough South, which is inclusive of the eastern communities in Clarington. Moderating our questions today will be our proud president, Jennifer Knox. Sorry. So we have over 50 attendees in this session today. So to stay focused and providing clarity and communication, we'll have everyone muted for the meeting. We will ask that if there's a lag in the stream due to the volume, that everyone turn their cameras off, and it will help keep the quality of the session running better. The meeting will be locked at 12:10 today to ensure everybody's security measures are in place. And we will be recording, so it will be available in the future if for some reason you couldn't pop on or had to pop off. CBOT's been working very hard to ensure strong communication and advocacy is being developed or delivered in a grassroots and insightful manner. And we thank all of you for participating and lending your voice to help us all move forward in these unprecedented times. I want to thank everyone that has submitted questions. We've had to summarize in the interest of time, but we'll provide both MP O'Toole and MP Lawrence with the full questions as submitted after the session. If you have questions during the session, please use the chat function, and these will all be presented, if not in this session, in follow-up. I'll now turn it over to Jennifer Knox to get our discussion rolling.
Thanks, Sheila, and thanks again to everybody who has joined today. Although we have to be physically distanced, it's nice to be able to come together in this way to learn together and to also look to recover together with strength through this COVID process. It's my pleasure to introduce MP Erin O'Toole for the region of Durham and MP Philip Lawrence for the region of Northumberland today. Today's session, we're going to start off with a 5-minute introduction and overview by each of our MPs, followed by a question and answer session. The question and answer session will be focused on our reaction to COVID among the business community members who are represented here today and across the broader municipality of Clarington, and then actions that we're looking at to sustain our businesses as well as look to recover from the present circumstances. So to start us off, we're going to introduce MP Erin O'Toole. Erin, take it away. You have 5 minutes or less.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Jenny, for your work with CBOT and keeping the lights on and keeping us well fed. Thank you as well to Sheila, Bonnie, and I see a number of people from CBOT on the team. Thanks for all you're doing. And I want to thank my colleague, Philip Lawrence. He's been fantastic and a great partner. And I see Adrian Foster's name, so thank you, Mayor Foster, for your work as well. I'm not sure if Lindsay is on, but I've been really proud of the cooperation and collaboration by everyone and business organizations, CBOT, and I think everyone has tried to respond to both the health and economic crisis we've been facing. And I've been proud of our community's response at a challenging time. I also want to give thanks to my team. I see Danielle from my team is on here. We've been trying our best to serve our community and under very unusual circumstances, because obviously I'm not in my office like most of you aren't. We've been trying to work remotely and to help. There's been a Team Canada approach by and large in response to this crisis pretty much early on. Danielle and I and Phil and his team would have had, we had literally dozens upon dozens of consular cases at first, including some, very challenging and frustrating ones where some of our constituents were stuck on cruise ships that couldn't get into port. And Danielle and myself and Mary in my office, we sometimes work directly with Minister Champagne, and I've been quite thankful for his work in very difficult circumstances to get our citizens home. And by and large, we only have a few left in India, one in Yemen, and man, it let me know that we've got folks from Durham all over this planet, and you really only realize that in a time when we're trying to get them all home. There has been by and large, a very bipartisan approach to the economic response to the crisis, and I've been thankful for that. In fact, if you look, most of the programs that we're all very familiar with now, the CERB, the Emergency Response Benefit, the wage subsidy, the emergency business account, every single proposal is not what it was first announced to be. And that's a result of everyone trying to make it better. Business groups across the country, chambers and boards of trade, MPs on the opposition side, like myself and Philip, particularly my work in restructuring as a lawyer, I knew that a 10% wage subsidy would not retain any jobs. So very quickly, we moved to have a second bill come before Parliament to make sure that was a 75% wage subsidy. We've been trying to get some of the qualification levels for the emergency business account reduced. We know that it's still causing problems for owner operators who don't really pay themselves a salary and use contractors. We've been pushing to try and make further changes, but it does look like we've only been able to make some changes. So we made progress. In fairness, the government has been trying to roll out benefits as quickly as possible. There will be a time to discuss on whether the initial response, both on a health and economic standpoint, was sufficient, but I don't think we're at that point now. It's challenging for me because I'm actually running to lead my party, and I've had a very different approach to coronavirus than Prime Minister Trudeau, for example. But in due course, we will say what we need to do and what we need to learn from this crisis. The final thing I'll say is it's been great to see some of the local initiatives at a small business level in terms of trying to help drive business, drive operations, even curbside pickup, supporting small businesses as much as possible. I know there's an incredible cash crunch for small businesses, and I think the efforts CBOT and downtown business associations and others have been bringing has been very, very helpful. But we really do have to now focus on reopening with proper social distancing, with proper sanitation, mask use. I've been talking about this for a few weeks because we cannot afford as a country a prolonged period of economic inactivity. So I'll leave it at that. We're here really for your questions. It seems like we've lived through 2 years over the last 6 weeks. I'm sure for all of you, especially for those of us that have school-age children who prefer Fortnite to their math homework. And that's been a challenge uniquely for Rebecca and I. But I hope you're all well, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thanks very much, Aaron. And MP Lawrence, over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all the business owners that, as Aaron said, keeping the lights on, keeping us fed, and really keeping the backbone of our economy and our community moving. And I won't repeat the thank yous that Aaron gave, but also my kudos to everyone who organized this. And I also saw Ron Hooper, I think, briefly, who I've seen on video conference after video conference after video conference. So I know Ron's out there doing a great job for us as well. So thank you to Ron as well. I'll just, Aaron did a great job of providing an overview of some of the programs that are out there. I'll just touch upon a couple of points there. And so in the CERB, of course, that's your benefit for your employees, your self-employed individuals. It's really the sole sort of benefit for most people who are sole practitioners out there, those who don't have a T4. If you don't have T4 employee income, you're pushed out of obviously the wage subsidy, and then you're also pushed out of the Canadian emergency business account as well. So, which in my mind mind has been the oversight in that. But that CERB program does provide at least a minimum income of that $2,000 a month for 3 months. The other thing that's recently come out is the Canadian Emergency Rent Assistance. That is a program between federal and provincial. We're still getting all the details out on that, but the part of that that I believe is still a little bit of a challenge is the fact that it's completely landlord driven, and the landlord has to be willing to give a 25% discount. But underneath that scenario, the government will pick up through forgivable loans up to 50% of the rental payments for April, May, and June. So just on that as well. And so I must say, Aaron's been a driving force in terms of changing the legislation. One of the strongest advocates for sole proprietors as we go forward, including pushing the payroll amount requirement down from 50,000 to 20,000, which does open up the CBOT to more people, pushing up the wage subsidy from 10% to 75%. So a lot of kudos to Aaron on that, and all that while Aaron is running for leadership. So we're getting some more certainty. I think my office is pretty much seen every CERB scenario you can imagine, and we're starting to get some more subsidy around the wage subsidy, which is open, and the wage subsidy, by the by, as well as the CERB, you apply through the CRA. The CBA, you just go to your local bank or credit union, and you can apply there. And that was another victory we had. Of course, we have the Ganaraska Credit Union amongst others in our area. The original legislation only had the major banks. So if you didn't have a bank account, a business bank account with one of the major banks, you were out of luck. We were able to change that. And we look forward to more details for the Canada Emergency Rental Assistance, because probably the most common scenario that I have had, challenging situation, is the business owner who does not have a T4 payroll. They might have independent contractors, but they still have significant overhead, and so they're unable to qualify for the CBA or the wage subsidy, and the CERB doesn't even pick up the rent. And so having the rent assistance is a good step, but I'll continue to push for that. And I would say, just as in support of our colleague too, of Aaron, who's been a great partner about this, is he is running for leader of our party. So if you are so inclined, you have till May 15th to buy a membership for Aaron and support him. And I think it would be terrific. And I say that because not only because I want to support Aaron, but also because we are with business owners. And Aaron and I know we have a riding full of small business owners. We know the issues you're coming across. And I think it would be great to have a prime minister who really, truly understood the situation that you're in. So with that, I look forward to hearing some great questions there.
Thanks very much, Philip. So thank you very much for providing us with the time to ask these critical questions on behalf of local businesses across our area. We don't expect that you may have the answers off the top of your head, but we know that Clarington Board of Trade has been working diligently with staff from both of your offices to understand the news coming out of Ottawa, and has posted a number of resources on the Clarington Board of Trade website. So we can also offer follow-ups to any questions that we need to gather more information on. So we'll start off with an easy one. We have a small business in Clarington who has temporarily laid off their employees, and they're wondering if they're able to continue on with the hiring of summer students without jeopardizing the funding that's currently in place for those temporarily laid off workers.
Okay, so they're what? I'm sorry. What funding are they jeopardizing? They've got laid off. Okay.
The CERB temporarily.
No, so as long. Sorry, yeah, I've got it. Perfect. Thank you. Sorry. So as long as the individual is prevented from returning to work because of COVID-19, that's on an individual basis. That's not based on the business per se. What you cannot do is collect a wage subsidy at the same time that an individual is receiving the CERB. So if you're hiring a new employees for a different situation or a different issue, I don't see an issue. Like I said, as long as that employee is blocked from receiving income for COVID-19 reasons. I don't know if you disagree on that, Aaron, but.
Yes, thank you. I had my IT support come in to help with the fuzziness of the camera. My IT support is my 13-year-old Molly. So thank you, Danielle, for telling me about the fuzziness. I think there has been some confusion about the Canada Summer Jobs Plan and the student benefit that Trudeau announced. I don't want to get overly critical, but it's crazy when we're spending $9 billion and asking people not to work. I made a proposal to the government 2 days ago in the House where we would actually cut their $9 billion in half, employ every student that wanted to through a tripling of the Canada Summer Jobs Program, and there'd still be enough money to give every student in Canada a $1,000 tuition credit. They did not change their plan. They only changed the requirement that now students have to demonstrate they're trying to find work over the summer in order to collect the emergency response benefit for students that was passed 2 days ago. There was some hope that farms and small businesses, especially ones that essential services workers are kind of fatigued, that we're hoping to get students. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. The students are now going to be getting a package that's about $1,250. They can earn up to another $1,000, so they could work a bit of part-time, but you're going to see a lot of perverse incentives from these programs, the CERB and the student program, where the government's payments actually encourage them not to take service or entry-level jobs. And it's unfortunate, it's a crisis, so we didn't have time to fix it in a better way. But I think the wage subsidy is usually only used for sort of full-time businesses to hold on to those jobs, the 75%. But I don't think there's anything specific that we might be able to offer for this scenario.
Thanks, Aaron. Okay, we'll move on to the next question, and this is really for medium-sized business. So for medium-sized businesses, such as construction firms who see a regular ebb and flow of projects from year to year, they can have a relatively volatile balance sheet also from year to year as a result. In addition, their payroll, for the most part, will exceed the CERB requirements. And for the most part, they also have more than 50 people. Because of this, it can be difficult to show a drop in revenue from year to year due to these larger projects that occur on an infrequent basis. So revenues can actually be up year over year while they continue to lose money through this situation. What would the federal government suggest to cover these mid-sized businesses that employ 50 plus people but are too big or small to get the help that they deserve during this time?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So yeah, so they're out obviously for the Canadian Emergency Bank Account because they've got a payroll probably in excess of 1.5 million. Then we're looking at qualifying for the wage subsidy, which requires in the month of March a 15% reduction, and then their month after was 30% reduction. Now they do have one of the wins that we were able to get is that you could use either cash or accrual, which does give you some flexibility in terms of looking at the accounting. So if you just received a large payment of cash from a pre-existing paycheck that doesn't necessarily disqualify, or from a pre-existing job, that doesn't necessarily disqualify you. We continue to push, and I know Aaron has, as well as our shadow cabinet minister for finance, Pierre Poilievre, continue to push for greater flexibility. But if you are over on cash and accrual accounting, you may be challenged to get the wage subsidy. Aaron, I'm not sure if you've got any further comments on that. But.
Yeah, no, we were able to, as Phil said, make the change for the 15% for the first month or so of eligibility because there were a lot of businesses that had two things: weren't able to show quite the steep 30% drop off. There were also new businesses that had opened, and that we had quite a few of them in Clarington that didn't have a year comparison for 30%. Some sort of physiotherapy type clinics and others that were in their first year of operation. So there is some flexibility in the first month for the wage subsidy, but as Phil said, some businesses won't qualify after the first couple of months, perhaps, or may have trouble qualifying in the first month, but then they will for the second month. There is a qualification requirement each month for the wage subsidy. I think it's important to note that all of these programs and why we've tried to work with the government, and we've tried to also understand why there's not perfection in a time of crisis. We're not suggesting that's even possible, because we won't be able to cover every single business and every single scenario. And the tricky parts were owner operators with virtually no salaries per se. We're not qualifying early on. And then this medium scenario is one that may only receive partial benefit of the wage subsidy program. So we'll have to see if as the wage subsidy program comes off, perhaps there can be more done with the emergency loan scenario. It is what it is. It's not going to hit everyone, unfortunately. And that's part of the reason why for the last few weeks I've been saying we have to plan reopening, not in a reckless fashion, but learning from the essential businesses that have been operating, learning from the science with respect to mask use, and ramping up testing at a major rate, and then spending the isolation attention on vulnerable populations.
Thanks very much to both of you for those answers. Speaking of recovery plan, that was a good segue. Thank you, Erin. This next question was sent in by one of our members who does a lot of work with the public and at outdoor festivals. So the question is, many organizations, corporations, and sole proprietorships are seasonally based, especially those that are in the entertainment field. And their income depends on outdoor festivals, events, and those types of activities. The question here is the $40,000 loan that has been offered to these businesses would not in all cases cover their entire year of expenses without those additional revenues that they would regularly be receiving. And so is there any planned financial assistance specific to these groups of individuals who rely on public gatherings as their only source of revenue during this time?
There was a package announced of money that the Prime Minister announced for Heritage Canada that was supposed to be targeted at the entertainment and artistic market segment. I don't have top of mind knowledge of how you will qualify for that, but if I recall, it was somewhere in the range of $800 million specifically for that segment. It came out the day he announced some relief for the Alberta energy sector. So obviously there was a little more attention paid to that one. Phil, do you have any, and certainly we can undertake to get some specific details on that Heritage Canada funding. Do you have any top of mind details on that, Phil?
Yeah, I can offer to get a contact, because I actually connected with Stephen Gilboa's office, who I have to, in a, I guess, non-partisan way, say his office is actually terrific with ours, and actually provided me with the contact of sort of the leading bureaucrat. And there will be, my understanding, be grant applications that paperwork which will be coming out, and I'm happy to provide that individual's contact info so that anyone who's involved in an artistic pursuit, because I would like that money to first and foremost go to Northumberland, Peterborough South, but if not, then Durham. And so I'm happy to flip that contact information over to you guys.
Thank you very much. And likewise, for another specific sector of the business community, in many cases, our downtown, our small downtowns form the backbone of our local business community. And so are you aware of any incentives or specific attention that's being dedicated to ensuring that we can keep our downtown cores viable post-COVID?
That has been a big subject of conversation, because the sort of quintessential main street in Bowmanville or Newcastle have been struggling because there are a lot of owner operators, and the rent relief program came quite late, and we were pushing for faster on that. The details are out now, but the cash flow that a lot of smaller businesses had was very limited. That's why one of our recommendations was to remit back the GST and to allow some cash flow. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. And so this is an area where I think we're going to have to continue to watch to see what supports there could be. It's also great to see some of the local initiatives in terms of shopping local, curbside pickup orders, operating virtually as much as possible. And I like some of the initiatives CBOT and others have been a part of. And if there's ways we can work within that, that would be very helpful. But the small businesses, the BIA type businesses on the main streets, generally the programs that are out, the emergency business account, CERB, wage subsidy, and now the rent relief is really the main area. And we know that a lot of owner operator, mom and pop type places have trouble fitting within those programs.
Yeah, and I would exactly right, Aaron. And I just go on. There's a specific programs that have been allocated, and then there are, as Aaron mentioned, the $800 million for communities. There's a series of announcements like that we've received. Really, no more further information than you have, but we'll make sure. And I know Aaron's got an extremely experienced, fantastic team, and we're building our team as well. And I think we've got some great people who will be digging through those programs. Quite frankly, the grant applications don't even exist yet, and so. But like I said, I know Aaron's team's got an amazing team, and we're doing our best here to as soon as they give us details, to dig through those grants and find as much of that we can bring back to our local communities.
Thank you very much. We're going to go a little outside of our local area for a moment and talk about the supply chain issues that were identified early on during this process coming out of China and other countries. As part of the economic stimulus packages that could be on the horizon, is there thought being given to increasing our Canadian-led supply chain to reduce dependence on some of these other countries for critical elements that can keep Canada's economy going?
As Aaron has a whole platform about that, I'll let you take the lead there, Mr. O'Toole.
Thanks, Bill. And this is an important question. And what's interesting is Canada has been able to do this for defense and security. That's permitted under all of our trade agreements. But now we have to make a concerted effort to make sure public health and PPE and all the things that have dominated the news in the last month and a half are part of that critical domestic capacity. And what's interesting is our trade agreements, if we take this as being critical to our national security, we can already show preference and buy local, for example, without contravening our trade agreements. And so that's something I've been pushing for quite a while now. And in fact, the great example of working together of all levels of government is I'm working with a Kitchener-Waterloo-based company that makes a mask called O2 Canada, made in China now. It's basically the best on the market, designed partially by Special Forces soldiers, and that's how I came to know the company. And spoke to Premier Ford's office. The company, they're trying to repatriate their manufacturing to Ontario from China. And I think you're going to see this with a lot of companies. I've been dealing with Medicom out of Montreal that wants to bring some of its manufacturing back as well. So there's a real willingness. I think what's going to happen is the provinces and the federal government will have to coordinate what specific products will be considered critical to our public health and safety needs. Certainly N95 masks. I'm sure 3 months ago, no one would know what the term N95 meant. Now, probably all Canadians know what N95 means. Surgical gloves, gowns, these sorts of things. It's time. I should give another shout out to Lakeridge Health. I've been in touch at times almost daily with Dr. Tony Stone, the chief of staff there, and their efforts at finding PPE, preserving, and trying to prepare for the surge. Thankfully, the surge didn't come to the level they were fearing, but they tried their very best to gather that. I worked with him on getting some shipments secured from China, and it was really remarkable to see the degree of hands-on approach Lakeridge took really early to inventory control for their PPE. But now we know we have to have this domestic capacity. So there's certainly a willingness. Premier Ford has made it a centerpiece of their response. And as I said, I've been able to work on a few levels. Even, Phil, I'm not even sure if I told you this, but I've been trying to secure some of the paper and fabric needs, even talking to Procter & Gamble in Belleville, my old company. So I think there's a real willingness. We need a national strategy towards this. And what's great is we can still have our trade agreements so that we send our agricultural commodities and others, other exports to countries we sell with, and still be allowed to show a local preference for these critical needs of our country. And so this will be a major focus. I've been talking about it for the last month, but look for policies. And if the government puts something up in the next few weeks, you'll see us support it.
Just
Thanks very much.
sorry, just a brief comment on that. Yeah, I think I'll just look at the local angle. Like if you drive through Cobourg or Newcastle or Bowmanville, I mean, there are so many places where there were factories that were at one time just absolutely buzzing with activity. And I think this is a unique opportunity to bring back the manufacturing. And as a conservative, I don't necessarily, I see that the way we do that is by making Durham and Northumberland as great environments for business to operate with low taxes and friendly government regulations that make sense for business owners, while not compromising safety, obviously, and the environment.
Thanks very much for that, Phil. Today in the news, I think it was mentioned that today we've entered the largest recession in history. It's sobering news, and I know that we all recognize that the success of local business plays a large role in the success of our local not-for-profit and charitable organizations and community groups. So I'm wondering if you can each just touch upon what the federal government sees in terms of support for these essential organizations within our communities over the long term as businesses look to recover.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say right off the top, and be curious to hear Phil's comments, but it was good to see as a result of lobbying from a number of service clubs, charities, faith organizations, that the programs, including loans and others, were extended to that sector. Now they're going to have considerable extra challenges because they also rely on donations that with an economic downturn will truly upend some of their revenue flow. But at least they've been able to qualify for these programs. And I know that many in the community have been trying to take advantage of this, but they will have to come up with, I think, new approaches to try and fulfill their mandate, knowing there'll be likely a year with much fewer donations than normal. I do want to also give a shout out to groups like the Rotary Club of Bowmanville and others that have shifted their focus, even for their Canada Summer Jobs, but their activities now for deliveries for seniors and others. I think it's been great to see the community response, and we have to make sure that we support these charities, nonprofits as much as possible.
Yeah, and I would second that, and also give it a public congratulations. Cameco, I think, just announced this morning, or perhaps the day before, that they had created a foundation, a great company from Port Hope, putting thousands of dollars back in our community. And look at the reality is that the government will never be a decent substitute for the power of business and free market, and that includes with helping our nonprofits and our charitable organizations. Ultimately, and I know with the great business owners we have here, if your businesses are more successful, it allows you to give back more to your community. And so this moves into the recovery phase, and we need to make sure that we have the best possible environment for business so you can all be as successful as possible, and we can make sure we take care of the most vulnerable in our community. In addition, as I said, the government has released hundreds of millions of dollars, but has made announcements, but there haven't been any details. And Aaron and myself will be, of course, digging through those grants and making sure that organizations that are in need, and some of them doing amazing things in our community, are taken care of the best way we possibly can.
Thank you very much. So as we have figured out how to connect on Zoom, we all agree that technology has played a large role in helping us cope with our current situation. For both of you, much of your ridings are rural populations that do not have access to broadband resourcing for internet. I know that I've personally spoken to my MP, Aaron O'Toole's office, about the $2,500 bill that I had once my children figured out how to unblock Netflix. Not all on an even playing field as far as access to high-speed internet goes. Do you see the federal government acknowledging that this is even more of a priority now moving forward in terms of providing rural broadband access to residents and businesses?
Well, if you don't mind, I'll just give a brief story. Then I know, Aaron, you probably have more information on this, but you'll notice that my background is not my house. This is my constituency office. That's because if I attempt to attend these conferences, and in fact, we had our first session of quote unquote virtual parliament. It's not actual parliament, but so the clerk from the virtual, I live in Orono, by the way, in rural internet, and the clerk called in to test the speed. And so they ran the test speed, and then there was a visible laughter, or audible laughter. There is no way that you are going to be able to attend virtual parliament from your house, given your strength of internet. It is something that I campaign heavily on, and it's not very interested in Aaron's comments on that, but it's not as much, I think, funding as making sure that we do it in an effective way. I think all parties are committed to having better rural internet, but as your representative, I'll push hard, and I know that Aaron's been pushing hard for a lot longer than I have to get rural internet going. So maybe Aaron, if you don't mind.
Thanks, Jenny. I do remember your impassioned advocacy to me on this subject. And listen, anyone I speak to from Burkton, it's the first thing they say to me, whether I'm at the cafe there or just talking to people. And it's amazing, as Phil said, he in Orono, we're the GTA, and we don't even have really high speed acceptable levels. We were able to get some grants for the Durham region, but the challenge is with the series of towers and satellite is they view most of the GTA, or at least Industry Canada does, as being well served, and they look at Northern Ontario and other parts of the country as really where the investment needs to go. What we need to do is incentivize and really allow the private sector. I'm okay with more foreign participation in our telecommunication industry, provided the US allows reciprocal for our companies, because we have to be honest with people. The government of Canada can't become the ISP for the country. What we've tended to do is we give grants to private sector players to provide service to more rural areas where there wouldn't be the market traditionally for a Rogers, Bell, that sort of thing. I think we need to accelerate that and provide more incentive for the private sector. We've had some success in some parts of Durham, but there's a long way to go. I do know the government has announced some enhancement to their existing broadband rollout. I can't remember the amount of that, Phil, the other day that Minister Baines announced, but they see this as a critical need, and I think there's going to be more money being spent. But we also need to, and I know Adrian and I have, if Adrian's still on the call, every time we talk to folks from Bell or Rogers or any of the smaller players, we're constantly lobbying for more towers or more lines. And there has been improvements in some parts of Clarington, but the further north you go and the further east you go, it gets worse. So it will remain a priority.
Thanks very much to both of you. That completes the questions that were submitted in advance. So I'm going to hand it back to Sheila, who has some additional questions and comments.
Thanks, Adam. I'm not sure how much I like having my team have the ability to shut me up, you know? So we've had a couple of questions on the chat. They're looking for a little more clarity on the summer jobs. I think the core of that question is that employees that are temporarily laid off are fearful that the summer jobs will be able to replace those temporarily laid off jobs rather than bringing the temps back first.
Sure, let me take this. One thing that my staff on the call knows, it was frustrating with no parliament sitting. We all watched the Prime Minister pop out of his house every day and say some things. Well, he said a few things about summer jobs that led literally every farm in Durham to contact me saying, hey, there's going to be more money for Canada summer jobs. The government didn't put any more money into Phil's budget or my budget. And the summer jobs program was actually completed. A few months ago, businesses, nonprofits, church groups, everyone that usually applies had to submit their applications. And so those jobs are done. So there's no creation of new jobs to compete with people that might be returning. What we had hoped was when he said there would be more jobs for students, that he would perhaps double our budget in Phil's riding, my riding, because I did have a lot of farms, grocery stores, others, saying to me, we didn't apply for the summer jobs program months ago because we didn't see COVID, and they saw the ability to get a grant to pay 100% of the wage of someone as being a way to persevere through the crisis. And some of our farms, of course, are having trouble with some of the seasonal temporary workers. So they were desperate to get some of the potential students. So there was a hope we could add to the summer jobs on a case-by-case basis, but that's not possible. So the summer jobs that are granted are only for the organizations that applied several months ago. And we've been able to secure a few more jobs for some of the critical ones that are pivoting their operations to be more community response to COVID. So there's no worry about summer jobs being subsidized to take away opportunities for folks that are laid off. The program is much smaller. It should have been a bit bigger in my view, but there'll be no competition.
Okay. Phil, did you have something to add?
I would just echo what Aaron says. There's not going to be any influx of summer students being paid by the government. It's the same amount every year, except for one or, like in my case, literally one or two extra jobs. So for those who are fearing that they're going to be pushed out of the market by these influx of government-funded students, no, that's just not the case.
Okay, so there's also a question here about family-run small businesses not being able to qualify for wage subsidy programs because a majority of the wages are made up by family.
Yeah, Phil, you want to take this? You've talked a lot about this.
Y- Yeah, the number one gap in the relief suite of software for or suite of programs is for sole proprietors, family-owned businesses, businesses that aren't incorporated, that don't offer T4. Oftentimes, when you start out a business as a sole proprietorship, and I know you all know this, your bank account, your personal account is your business account. There's no requirement, of course, to pay a salary. And so therefore you have a business just as it can be the exact same business as the one next to you that's incorporated and paying salary, and they will qualify and you won't. I know it's something that I've continually pushed on. I'm up in Ottawa, and in all likelihood that'll be the question I'll be asking the Minister of Finance. Is we've got to do something for sole proprietor, for businesses, for those family businesses you mentioned that don't have that T4 income. We need to take care of those folks.
Okay, and I think as a last thought here is there's some common comments here on broadband, and making sure that we're very clear that it's not just a rural problem. It is a rural problem. I'm not saying it's not.
Yeah.
But I spent probably an hour and 15 minutes on the phone with Arthur Capone yesterday to listening about how along the 401 he can't run his business effectively because the broadband is not there. And, you know, we're hearing from people in downtown Bowmanville that are having to pay crazy amounts of money to get the proper service so that they can run their businesses. So we as the Board of Trade strongly encourage that when you look at the broadband issue, it is not a rural issue. It's a community issue. It's a national issue. And, you know, I don't know what the answer is. I've been trying to crack that nut for about 15 years. And I quite often say it's like being in Groundhog Day. So we keep getting the same answers, and you know, maybe a little more competition and a little less monopoly on the market might be.
One way to crack the nut, Sheila, and this was a project I took on as a brand new MP because I was keen on it, and we made some partnerships and got some money for Durham. But I've long believed that the local distribution companies for electricity should do this. And so I know Adrian's on the call. He's probably heard me rant about this years ago, but the Lexicons, the Viridian type players of the world, they have a billing system. They're hooked up to everyone's house anyway, and they have infrastructure. In some parts of Canada, those type of utilities have supplied high-speed internet. And there have been some, Olds, Alberta is a great case in point where it was the first community to develop its own gigabit program. The Oshawa PUC has dark fiber, which they've started lighting up in Oshawa. But this is something that I know a few years ago when the government was trying to have more of the local distribution companies merge to make them a little larger. This could be a very smart business line for them, I think. I know they've looked at it. I really do think that is key. And so I think we had some progress on it a few years ago, but I'd be happy to be part of it, any new push, because there is such a complementary number of things that the LDCs are already doing that could fit in to this business. Some of them rent water heaters and things like this, but another service, another utility for a company that's already billing you for a utility makes a lot of sense.
100%. I agree with everything that Aaron said. Continue to need to have those public-private ventures. And I would just say too, you know what, if the Prime Minister lived around here, might be a chance to might get faster internet. I'm just throwing that out there. But
I'm gonna have to pay you for all this.
Okay, so we're going to wrap up. I think that that we've had a really fulsome conversation. I'm going to give Aaron 1 minute to kind of wrap up and thank this amazing business community for participating today.
Thank you, amazing business community, for participating. And thank you all for your individual efforts within CBOT, within BIAs, and it's been great to see. I have a caucus meeting later today, so I won't be able to make the mayor's call this time. We're doing a Zoom caucus meeting with 150 people, so it will be fun. But thank you for what you're doing. I really have been impressed by the degree of local hands-on leadership, collaboration, and I think we have to continue that, because as we plank the health challenge, and we're not going to be out of it, but we're going to adapt into a new form. I think the more we can do to help drive business local, to have people maybe buy their Christmas gifts, like I've been talking about, how can we do some buy early Christmas to get some cash flow into the businesses right when they open. I think some creativity where we can all work together, doing the social distancing, but helping the businesses as they ramp up. I'm keen to do that, and Phil and I can use our platforms. We've been sending out information on the benefits, but I'm happy to also send out information on how we can help and support local. And thank you for your efforts doing the same thing. We're going to get through this, and I'm proud to partner with all of you.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. Phil?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for all the sacrifices you've made. And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say we're doing a great job. I know the Northumberland numbers are 13 cases of COVID, 13 that have been resolved, no cases in the last 3 days. So across this whole area, we're doing a terrific job. So thank you for business leaders for doing that. And as we go forward, yeah, happy to, and a great idea, Aaron, and love to partner with you to have a platform where we can help promote some of the local businesses. Would love to do that. And also just as a last service announcement here, there is, of course, because no one's going out to restaurants, there's way too many potatoes out there. So we've got to help everyone across Canada. So please go out there and eat some poutine. We need to launch the national poutine strategy. And in all seriousness, guys, thank you very much for everything you're doing. And I'm here to work and to service you guys. Lots of great information on Aaron's website and mine as well. So thanks very much, guys.
Awesome. And so in true CBOT fashion, I'm going to make you listen to me for 1 moment before we close the line. Just to follow up on what you were saying about supporting local business, if you go onto our website and you go to the shops, we have 3 modules set up on our website. One of them is for food and farm gate. One of them is for shopping. So we've got a list of everybody that's providing different levels of service in our new role. And we have one that we're just sort of populating now on wellness. So looking at which chiropractors are taking people on emergency basis, those kind of things. So
perfect.
I urge you to go to our website and drive everybody you know to our website. That would be muchly appreciated.
Will do.
And I just want to sort of finish up with a couple of thoughts. You know, I'm concerned about the cash flow in August for some of these small businesses. So we need to keep in mind that that there will be a long-term cash flow challenge for a lot of businesses. So we need to pace ourselves as buyers as well as support where we can. And then just my final thought. You know, I've worked with this business community for over 20 years, and I continue to tell everybody that I cross paths with that I'm so proud of the way the Clarington business community pulls together and collaborates and supports one another and takes the competition out and puts the human kindness in. So Canada has seen an awful lot of tragedy in the last couple of weeks. And so it's a horrible way to be reminded to be kind to one another, behave, do what they're telling us to do. Because I have the most adorable grandson on the planet, and he needs me to hug him soon. So with that, I would like to thank Aaron and Phil for sharing your time with us today. I know you're very busy. The work you're doing for our community is greatly appreciated by all. And we look forward to continuing, and hopefully next time we're sitting in a room having a coffee doing this.
Or a
That'd
beer.
be great. Or a beer, yeah.
It is Friday, right? It's hard to tell what day it is most days, right? Thank you all. Stay strong, stay safe.
Same
Thanks,
to you.
guys.